So coming back to again connecting these dots to these two programs, one is the what do you say, the Citizens for City, and also the Sculpt Your City. So the background has been the lack of urbanization and all that. So I think if I'm right, so the entire visioning for these two programs is how do we involve or co-opt the citizens for their own cities kind of thing, if I'm right.
Okay, yeah, exactly. See, typically if you see our Indian cities, we know that cities are planned unilaterally by the governments.
Right.
I mean, you and I have never been consulted to when a city development plan was put forth, right?
Right.
And so this was our finding. I mean, we spoke to industry chambers and we spoke to educational institutions, we spoke to stalwarts in the cities, and we asked them, I mean, have you ever been involved in the vision of a city?
Right.
Because typically if you see any world city, like maybe a Hong Kong or maybe a Tokyo or maybe a London or even a New York, they are all collective exercises.
Right.
I mean, they just involve stakeholders, call them, and then go through a process of visioning.
So co-creation kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
they co-create cities, whereas it never happened in India. But JNNURM, the Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission, insisted on a vision for the city. But unfortunately, as it was the first step, it was a consultant that did all the visions. You know, it was a desk job. They just sat and then they didn't do that.
Right.
But I take the credit of driving the visioning exercise for Hyderabad way back in 2002.
Which I am sure it has become a role model for a lot of other cities in the country.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it's going
we
on.
somehow came with the, our core competency was driving visioning exercises, getting multiple stakeholders,
Right.
looking at sectoral investment,
Cross participation.
and and also understanding everything, understand the benchmarks for certain performances.
Right.
It was, I think we are equipped, and that's what excites us.
So
this exercise on Citizens for City is to plug the gap that exists in the governance framework today. I mean, there's a big chink in the framework there.
Right.
You don't have any mechanism to partner with the stakeholders. So we created a platform, and we called practically the entire corporates to partner, and almost 100 organizations came together, and their strategies were incorporated into the city development strategy of Hyderabad, and some of the strategies that we got from them, 7-8 of them are being implemented in other cities.
very good.
So
very good.
so now we know.
There is also, if
it
I'm
can be a
right,
very exciting thing.
Exactly. And so I think if you look at the other side, that is the government side, because ultimately they had to have, you must be also looking for, at least you must have looked for the buy-in from the government, because you might be giving them a lot of suggestions, or you might be giving them actually the template for action also. But then if they're not willing to develop or take it forward, I'm sure it must have been a disaster. But I think in this case, I think you also involved them, and therefore it was really a win-win situation for the government as well as the city's stakeholders. Was it the case in this?
Yeah. We went through the whole process of first, engaging with the government,
Right.
and telling them that, you might get some value. You're not paying for that.
Right. And all the people are.
And tomorrow, if this, this gets implemented, then there's more ownership and more compliance.
Right.
Let's say a smart parking. So people wouldn't mind really, using the facility, provided you make that happen, and nobody minds paying for service.
Right.
So we came out with something on those lines. And what you're talking about, Sculpt Your City, is actually a knowledge product that we built.
Okay.
So we compiled all that strategies, and we went through iterations of elimination using international jury, and
so that's like almost like a white paper for any city that wants to develop on these lines.
Exactly. So it's a knowledge product. I mean, you can you can pick up something and straight away start implementing.
Step by step guide kind of thing. So you just very good. So I think that's one. I think that's what you have been doing on behalf of this for the Foundation for Future Cities. Must have been very interesting, and you must really congratulate you for that kind of success. Now your take on some of the the best or maybe the smartest cities in the world, just both from American continent and maybe Central Asia and Europe especially, because I think I was just reading 2013 smart cities from Forbes magazine, which it has ranked the top 10 cities in the world. Maybe I don't know whether it's accidental or what it is like. All 10 of them happen to be from European Union. Right, from Berlin, Stockholm, Amsterdam and all that. So do you find any correlation between, what must have been the reason for all the top 10 cities to have come from one continent, that is the European Union? Is it because they had better planning, is it because they had better visioning, or is it because they had good private participation kind of thing?
In fact, something you talked about Stockholm, like
Right.
Sweden. The advisor to the Prime Minister of Sweden was with me on a foreign leaders program.
Right.
So we exchanged a lot of notes, and we understood why certain economies are moving faster, and
Right.
then we realized that if you typically look at those countries, they are minimalistic countries. See, let's accept some things. For instance, you take America. United States can never be let's say a frugal nation.
Right.
It cannot
Because it's always megalomaniac.
It's grandiose.
Right.
It's grandiose plans, big freeways and big buildings, big trucks and big
Right.
cars. Europe is just the other way around.
Miniature.
Everything is small.
Yeah.
They don't mind. Like this lady who was advisor
Advisor.
to the Prime Minister was cycling to work every day. And when I asked her, lady, how do you attend some formal meetings? She says, I have my coats there. So she
Right.
wears it only when she has to go. And they think about conservation everywhere. Like in the US, when we had meetings, she would wear her shoes and walk to that meeting place. And they are about conservation.
She's not
It's-
throwing. Yeah, she's not.
It's ingrained in their blood. Like there was another gentleman from Finland, and I know he was a vegan, and he talks about the carbon footprint when you choose certain type of foods.
Oh,
Yeah, so it is in their DNA now.
so much sensitization.
So, yeah, exactly. So it has gone from, they don't need public campaigns anymore. I mean, the children talk about just being frugal, being minimalistic, being having a larger vision, using solar.
Right.
So their passive designs, their homes are designed very well. They are not into the showy culture.
Very eco-friendly there. I think.
Absolutely. So their needs are now kind of contained. So that's why Europe
Right, I
has
see.
moved. And if you look at Amsterdam, something very interesting they have done recently. They started using this phenomenon of virtual working.
Right.
And almost 300 tall towers are today unoccupied. They have just gone away, asked them to work from home, and then 300 tall towers are lying vacant, and they're saving energy completely.
300
Yeah.
towers.
So now they'll start doing something else there.
Right.
So every country I have seen there has a certain strategy, and they somehow got there. Not the United States.
Right. So I think one of the other cities that is quite often talked about from Asian perspective is Seoul. I mean, what's your take on how it? Of course, one is that I think Seoul is the what do you say the epitome of I think some of the finest innovation, especially in automobile. That is your Hyundai and all, and also Samsung and LG and all this.
Absolutely.
So I think LG and Samsung, they do participate in city development and all that. They have in fact, the former CEO of Samsung has become the minister of urban development and all that in South Korean government. So do you find again same parallels between what these European Union countries and also Seoul that yes, they want to take it forward?
I think if you look at South Korea, my guess is South Korea is completely different from Europe.
Okay.
Europe, if you look at Europe doesn't believe in too much technology.
Right.
And
Like you said, minimalist.
Yeah, exactly. So Europe doesn't believe in too much technology, whereas if you look at South Korea,
Right.
South Korea is very heavily technology dependent. They have a smart city plan, like Seoul has a smart city plan.
Exactly.
That is so robust,
Right.
so beautifully designed. I mean, every smallest detail has been worked out.
Right.
So they want to make their cities eco-friendly by deploying technology. Whereas, I'll give you a simple example. Now take this building.
Right.
Take this building. This building can be a net zero building, meaning it doesn't emit any kind of
Radiation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So it can be a net zero building by two ways.
Right.
First way is by using a simple, let's say, European method of living. That is by designing the
Very
building in
ergonomical.
such a way you will have north lights, and
Yeah,
you will not have to use any kind of
Right, right.
lighting, because
I know,
you are
yeah.
using natural lighting, and so it is called the passive design, passive
Right.
technology
Right.
in design. So any architect who's eco oriented will do that for you. Alternatively, a technology evangelist
Mhm.
will perhaps build, building like this, make it look really flamboyant,
Mhm.
use a whole lot of technology, and get it to the same state net zero. But,
So, but I
here
think-
this is an expensive proposition,
Right,
whereas
because-
this is a minimalistic proposition. This looks glorious, and this doesn't look too attractive.
Right.
So here what we are talking about is
So I think one related question here is that do you think therefore even if let's say countries or cities from developing countries want to adopt this kind of technology, do you think because they are not able to do it because they are prohibitively expensive?
absolutely, India belongs to that category. In fact, when everybody talks derogatively about India,
Right.
I keep saying, I don't think we have any business to talk about India that way, for the
Right.
simple reason that urbanization caught us unawares.
Right.
Okay, number one.
Mm.
The second thing, it's like there's a dozen guests who land at your house and you are not prepared. So how do you accommodate them? Where is the food on the table? Where is the room to sleep? Where are the toilets?
Right.
That's exactly what is happening to our places. At the same time, of course, we haven't prioritized investments.
Right.
Let's say the head of the house
Mm.
perhaps set aside certain bit of money for guests unplanned or whatever. Then
Right.
he would have somehow managed, maybe book them in a temporary guest house or whatever.
What?
The same thing could have been done in our cities.
Mhm.
And here the most important thing is we should know that in Indian cities we have invested very less in urban infrastructure.
Okay.
For instance, you take UK.
Mhm.
UK invests anywhere between 200 to 250 pounds
Mhm.
per capita
Right.
on urban infrastructure. If you take China invests something to the tune of
This is per capita.
per capita. China invests $120 per capita. In India, we have
That's,
$17 per capita.
Mm.
So woefully low, I must say.
I think it
So
is.
these are, very, investments that have been very low.
Right.
In fact, in all my speeches and my reports, I say that we have to be very aggressive in my investments in urban infrastructure.
Right.
Because the more state-of-art infrastructure you have in a city, the more GDP contribution goes.
The ability to go.
Yeah, you're able to
exactly.
generate.
Right. Now I think